My son called on a humid Saturday evening in Accra and said, "Mommy, if you won't move into assisted living, don't expect me to visit or help when you're too old to manage. I have my own life now." I paused, then answered calmly, "I understand, Kofi." That night, I sat with my tea growing cold and decided I would protect what Edward and I had built. The next morning, I met my lawyer to transfer the house and savings into a special needs trust for my younger daughter, Adwa, and prearranged my own care without ever touching my son's expectations again. I am Akosua Mensah, 72 years old, living in the quiet East Legon suburb of Accra. Edward and I built this life over 40 years. We met in the 1970s at Legon, him studying architecture, me training as a nurse. After marriage, we bought this modest two-bedroom house in 1985 for what felt like a fortune then. We raised two children here, Kofi, now 48, a bank manager in Tema, married to Afua with 3 children, and Adwa, 44, who has lived with cerebral palsy since birth. Edward worked long hours designing buildings across the city. I worked night shifts at Korle-Bu Teaching Hospital, coming home to change Adwa's clothes and feed her before sleep. We saved every cedi, school fees for Kofi, therapy and special school for Adwa, a small plot we rented out in Kumasi. When Edward died 7 years ago from a sudden heart attack, the house was paid off, worth over 2.5 million cedis now. His pension, our investments in treasury bills and a few shares, plus my own retirement benefits. Enough for me to live simply, tend my garden, walk to the market, and read my Bible and novels every evening. Kofi was always the one with big plans. He moved to Tema after university, built a fine house, drove a good car. Afua ran a boutique. They visited on Christmas and Easter, brought the grandchildren who called me Nana Akosua, and played in the garden. I helped whenever they asked. 10,000 cedis for school fees when their salaries were late, 15,000 cedis for hospital bills when Afua's mother was ill, they said, 8,000 cedis for car repairs. I never asked for receipts. Adwa lived with me still, gentle, dependent on daily care, but sharp in mind, loving to listen to radio dramas. Kofi and Afua rarely offered to help with her. "We have our own responsibilities," Kofi would say. I understood, but the requests grew. A new generator for their house, money for the children's private school, always temporary. Over 6 years, I had given them over 180,000 cedis. The thanks came in smiles and promises, but the pattern was clear. The first real crack appeared last year. Kofi called. "Mommy, we need 20,000 cedis. The children's school is threatening to send them home." I transferred it. At our next family lunch, when I asked how the fees were settled, Afua looked confused. "Fees? We paid them months ago." Kofi laughed it off. "Mummy must have mixed it up." But I saw the quick glance between them. I started noting the new furniture in their photos on WhatsApp, the vacations they posted. Had I been funding their comfort while they waited for the day I would need them? Then came the call. It was a Saturday, rain tapping the zinc roof Edward had fixed himself. I was preparing fufu when my phone rang. Kofi's voice was tight. "Mommy, we've been talking. You refuse to move to assisted living. You're getting older. If you won't make things easier for yourself, don't expect me to visit or help when you can't manage alone. I have my own family, my job, the children. I can't carry everything." I listened. The fufu pounded in the background. When he finished, I said quietly, "I understand, Kofi." He sounded relieved. "Good. We just want clarity." I hung up. The kitchen was quiet except for the rain. I sat at the table Edward made, stared at the wall where our wedding photo hung. Adwa wheeled in, asking if everything was okay. I smiled, touched her hand. "Everything will be fine." That night, I could not sleep. The words replayed. Don't expect me to visit or help. He had drawn the line. I would respect it, but on my terms. The next morning, after my walk around the estate, flowers blooming, neighbors greeting, I called my lawyer, Mr. Kwame Asari. We had worked together after Edward's death. "Akosua, how are you?" he asked. "I need to revise my will and create a trust," I said, "for Joa's protection. Can we meet today?" We met in his office near Oxford Street. I explained everything. The call, the years of help, my fears for Joa if I became frail. Mr. Asari listened. "I want a special needs trust for Joa," I told him. "Irrevocable. The house, investments, savings, everything except my daily account goes in upon my death or incapacity. It will pay for her care, therapy, housing if needed, managed by a professional trustee. Kofi and Afua cannot access it." He nodded. "And the rest?" "Any remainder to the Children's Hospital at Korlabu, where I worked for 30 years, and a small education fund for Kofi's children, but only direct to them at 25, no parental control. We also arranged my own care. I prepaid for a home nurse service and a modest assisted facility if I chose, funded from my pension. Nothing depended on my son. I closed the old joint account we'd set up years ago for emergencies, opened a new one alone. The bank manager, Auntie Grace, asked if I was okay. Just simplifying, I said. Transfers completed in weeks. I felt lighter, like breathing after holding my breath too long. Kofi discovered it a month later. He had access to old statements. He called, furious. "Mommy, what is this lawyer charge? And the account is gone." "Updating my affairs," I replied calmly. "You can't do this without telling me. After everything—" "After what, Kofi? After you said I'm not your responsibility?" Silence. Then, "You're being stubborn. I'm being protected." He came the next weekend with Afua. They sat in the living room. Ajwa stayed in her room. "Mommy," Kofi began, "this is crazy. The house is family property. It's mine. Edward and I paid for it." Afua tried softness. "We're worried about you. Assisted living would be better." "I will decide when the time comes," I said. "You made your choice clear." Kofi's voice rose. "If you don't reverse this, we won't come again. The grandchildren won't know you." My heart clenched, but I looked at him steadily. "You would use the children to punish me?" He stood. "You're forcing this." "No, your words did." They left. Threats followed. Lawyer letters claiming undue influence, incompetence. I was examined by Dr. Ofori, my doctor of 20 years. Report: fully competent, sharp mind, independent. The court hearing was brief. The judge, a woman in her 60s, read my documents, the text records I had saved, the trust papers. "Why the threat to withhold visits?" she asked Kofi. I was frustrated. Frustration does not justify coercion. Case dismissed. My decision stood. Afterward, Kofi stared in the hallway. "You'll be alone." I have a Adwa. I have friends. I have dignity. Spring brought change. I volunteered at the Children's Hospital again, reading stories, holding small hands. Joined a church women's group, sisters who shared tea and laughter. Traveled to Cape Coast with Adwa for a weekend, the sea air fresh. Kofi's consequences came quietly. His bank faced trouble. Loans he'd taken against future inheritance defaulted. House in Tima sold in distress. They moved to a smaller place in Tima Newtown. Court granted me supervised visits with the grandchildren, monthly, 2 hours. We bake banku, read Ananse stories, play in the garden. Ama, the eldest, whispers, "Nana, why don't we come more?" Sometimes adults make hard choices, I say, but I love you always. Now I garden every morning. Roses Edward planted still bloom. I read, walk, care for Adwa. Friends fill my house. Kofi calls rarely, no real apology. I learned love does not mean allowing harm. Family is respect, not obligation. I chose myself, and it was the best decision. What would you do if your child drew a line and called you a burden? Would you wait in silence or protect your peace? You deserve that peace. Always. Here are some images of the narrator, Akosua Mensah, as a dignified African grandmother in her 70s, calm, strong, reflective, perfectly capturing her quiet empowerment in the garden and home scenes. This one shows her thoughtful in the garden, pruning flowers with quiet strength. A peaceful moment tending the backyard, roses and resilience. Warm, wise expression in a cozy home setting, embodying the story's dignity.